Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays Dire Literary Series. And tonight, my guest is the very acclaimed and wonderful Kim Addonizio. And let me, someone that you got to go to her bio. Kim Addonizio is the author of 7 poetry collections, 2 novels, 2 story collections, and 2 books on writing poetry. The Poet's Companion with Dorianne Laux and Ordinary Genius. Her poetry collection, Tell Me, was a finalist for the National Book Award. She also has 2 word music CDs, Swearing, Smoking, Drinking, and Kissing with Susan Browne, and My Black Angel, which has been translated into, it's been comparison to My Black Angel, Blues, Poems, and Portraits, a collaboration with woodcut artist Charles D. Jones. The poetry has been translated into several languages, including Spanish, Arabic, Italian, and Hungarian. And if you can see the screen, you can read the rest of it. It's some wonderful, wonderful accolades. You can probably read it better than I just recited it. But with that, I am going to turn it on over to Ms. Kim Addonizio.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Glad you're here. I'm gonna read just I don't know, 3 or 4 poems from this book. Now we're getting somewhere, and then a couple of newer pieces to end it. And I'll start with this one, which is actually the first poem in the book. It's called Night in the Castle. I'm not sure what to do about that scorpion twitching on the wall. Maybe I should slam it with this book of terrible poetry, or just read aloud to it until it dies of a histrionic metaphor, bleeding out on the ancient stones in a 5-octave aria. If I get a little drunker, I might try to murder it with my sandal. I gave up on mercy a while ago. That's what happens when you live in a castle on an artist's grant. You look at the late afternoon Umbrian light smearing itself over the tomato vines and feel entitled, like an underage duchess whose husband has finally died of gout, leaving her free for more secret liaisons with the court musician. She might even have poisoned the duke, that lecherous shit. It's hard to remember what life was like before this, and I don't want to. I want to stay here and poison the king next. I want to be a feared and beloved queen, ordering up fresh linens and beheadings, locking up bad poets in their artisanal hair shirts, torturing academics with pornographic marionette performances. Meanwhile, the scorpion is still there, twitching slightly, reciting something about violence and the prison of ego. And I can hear the clashing armies on the wide lawn outside, sinking down into history and then standing up again. And this is a kind of a response to Walt Whitman, to the section of Leaves of Grass that begins, I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. And he goes on. Sentiments that I pretty much agree with, but I sort of argue with them in this poem called Animals. And it has the little epigraph, I think I could turn and live with animals. And also it begins with an O without the H. Oh, Walt, you were wrong. They aren't placid or self-contained. I just watched a spoonbill make carpaccio out of a frog, and crocodiles dining on wildebeests trying to cross the Maro River. It's wrong to say oh in poetry these days, which makes me want to have a loud orgasm right here in an unashamed animal way. You must have been looking at some cows on a farm, but who wants to live like that, standing around in a shed with sore tits, shitting claustrophobically, or standing around shitting and being tortured by flies and eating grass? I know you like grass, but it's no fun to be a pricey pre-hamburger, ruminating with no TV. If you'd had a cable subscription, maybe you would have felt differently watching Nat Geo Wild and those exhausted herds on the Serengeti. Walt, I still love you even if in this instance you might have been a victim of the pastoral tradition. Let me tell you about animals. The green anaconda swallowed the young capybara whole. Oh, 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 Walt. Capybaras are the largest rodents on Earth. I don't think I'd survive as an animal for long, even a large one. Look at the elephants. Imagine being murdered and becoming a doodad or furniture inlay. Walt, I actually like sweating and whining about my condition, hot flashing and bitching in my cream satin sheets, lying awake drunk and weeping in the dark. I'd definitely like to own more things. An electric knife sharpener, for instance, would come in handy for carving up the less fortunate on special holidays. I want to be lucky as long as I can. Walt, I don't think death is luckier or leads life forward like you said. I don't think I'm going to grow from the grass you love. I'm just going to have one last blackout in a dirty pink lace dress and be eaten by tiny, ugly, legless larvae. Um, okay, this is a shorter one, but no less cheerful. It's called The Miraculous, and it's also for you form freaks, which I certainly am. It's a it's kind of it's a loose sonnet. It's a 14 liner, and it's mono rhymes. So the scheme is A for 14 lines. The Miraculous. The band starts the song over. The rhythm's still wrong. Sounds that will never alchemize to music. My brother's new liver is failing. There's someone's loud lover swearing to Christ in the bar to get sober, but the moon is being smothered by the trees and there is no ladder far enough. I go down to the mouth of the river, ugly with waste, yellow foam and trash. A tanker crawling the horizon. What does it bear? Oil or chemicals? I was taught a man could walk on water, that if I listened and unhinged my heart, I'd hear a presence stirring the air. And I do. God the murderer, making things perfectly clear. And one more anyway from this book, um, called Still Time. And probably every poet worth their salt knows a little bit about Keats and knows Keats and also knows that at the end of his life, at the age of, I think around, what was he, 26, 27, somewhere in there, very young, that he had tuberculosis and went to Italy hoping that the climate would help him. But he died there in a house at the bottom of the Spanish Steps. And if you go there to the Keats Shelley house, there's a little museum and you can see the room that Keats died in. And also, Severn was Keats's friend who was an artist who accompanied him and was with him when he died. And in fact, he's buried beside Keats. Severn lived into, I think, early 80s, into his early 80s, but he's buried next to Keats. So you can also, if you make a pilgrimage to Rome, you can also go to the non-Catholic cemetery where Keats and Severn are buried, along with Shelley and Gregory Corso, of all people. So he's there too, not far from Shelley. This is called Still Time. In Severn's letters, Keats is still alive, though coughing blood. One day he's better, then things look very bad, and if you stop reading, he's still lying there, calmer again and clearer, before they take his body out and burn the wallpaper. In books you fall in love with, you always slow down a few pages before the end, but then there you are, with only the back cover blurbs that say, "This story will make you cry." and maybe an outdated photo. When you photograph the famous fountain, the water stops moving, but water never really stops moving. Your plush lion swirled away. Your parents floated off. Okay, but also that wine stain on your shirt only looked permanent. After the horrifying bats in the cenote, little gold-flecked fish appeared. You finally stopped sobbing in the bathroom at weddings. You can't go back to 1821 and invent streptomycin, or stop the poet's kindly doctor from bleeding his patient. But you can climb the stairs to that room in Rome and see the flowers on the ceiling, the same ones Keats held for weeks in his fevered gaze. That's as close as you can get. Go home. Your miserable bitch of a neighbor is gone, carried out, and never to return. I like to think of that as a silver lining poem. Um, well, the time goes really quickly here. Tim said 10 minutes, so I'm just going to read two more. And these are newer ones. And I think I saw that Bill Walsh was here somewhere from the James Dickey Review, and I'm pretty sure this is one that they took recently that's coming out. It's called This Too Shall Pass. And I wrote this actually, I had written those very words to a student of mine who was struggling with some personal stuff. And I wrote her that in an email, and she got extremely angry at me um, for giving her a bromide. And um, I can't tell you the content of the email because I wouldn't want to violate her privacy. But suffice it to say, she was struggling with something very difficult. I wrote a well-meaning bromide to her, which angered her quite a bit. And then I thought about it for a while, and I ended up writing this poem. This too shall pass. Was no consolation to the woman whose husband was strung out on opioids. Gone to a better place, useless and suspect intel for the couple at their daughter's funeral, though there are better places to be than a freezing church in February, standing before a pink casket with a princess motif. Some moments can't be eased, and it's no good offering cliches like stale meat to a tiger with a taste for human suffering. When I hear the word miracle, I want to throw up in the mouth of a conservative Christian. Everything happens for a reason. More good tidings someone will try to trepan your skull to insert. When fire inhales your house, you don't care what the haiku says about seeing the rising moon. You want an avalanche to bury you. You want to lie down under a slab of snow, dumb as a jarred sideshow embryo. What a circus. The tents dismantled, the train moving on, always moving, starting slow and gaining speed, taking you where you never wanted to go. And this last poem I'll read also has fire in it. This is called Exit Opera. Was this also in James Dickey? I'm sort of jogging my memory here. I can't remember, but I think it is. Maybe Bill can let people know in the chat when that issue's coming out. But I wrote this one after I did a BBC radio show uh, on called California Burning, and we went to the giant sequoias in Northern California and spent the night in a fire tower. Um, and she wanted me to write something for the show as well, so I ended up writing this piece. And I think that the title Exit Opera is going to be the name of the next collection. So, Exit Opera, and I'll end with this one. Oh, and it refers to Wagner's Ring Cycle, which all you need to know is that's what the Shield Maiden refers to, and it's also very long. The Shield Maiden waits in the wings. The opera goers wait, shifting in their seats. Out in the forest, the ember waits in its cigarette to make its black mark on the world, not content to ravage a few rolled tobacco leaves. It wants to show it can murder more trees than the last bitter fire. In the sequoia grove, in record heat, Tourists wait for a chance to stand inside an enormous burn-hollowed tree, while the bark waits the years it takes to grow over the scar. Legions of charred trees, legions of kids clambering over rocks. In the troposphere, the next giant pyrocumulonimbus cloud waits to be born from its gassy parents. Once the opera's begun, you must wait for what feels like eons for Brunhilde to deliver her aria as she throws herself on the funeral pyre and everyone goes up in flames. Once you escape a wildfire, leaving everything behind, a little void appears beneath your heart and lodges in your ribs. Again, you must wait. If you see lightning, listen for the thunder to tell you how far or near you are. When Milton went blind, he felt useless, but then he decided it was okay to stand still, to abide. Look at the trees, who are patient, who suffer us to touch them. Thank you.
Wow. That was just amazing. I love that so much. And I guess we're going to do some questions here. So if people want to put some questions in the chat, I'll try to get to all of them. So your book, Now We're Getting Somewhere, came out in July, and it's your first book in what, 6 years or so?
It came out in March of I think it was 2021. Yeah, it was after the first year of the pandemic. Came out in 2021. Yeah, and the one before that, I think came out in 2016. Lucifer at the Star. No, Mortal Trash.
Yes.
2016, I think. So something like that.
So
I
what do you think in those 5 or 6 years? Was there anything new that happened? I know the pandemic happened. So was the new book influenced by that at all?
It was, yeah. Yeah, I was still writing and revising things in 2020. I think um my publisher had it by um early 2020, and then but there's always time between that elapses between the that and publication. So there was a whole, little more than a year, I think, before it came out. So I had some time to change some poems and add some things and revise some things. So part of it is definitely haunted by that.
And your work is so gritty yet witty yet intellectual. How do you manage to balance like all of those balls in the air? I just said the word ball, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just sort of um, the way that I think, the way that it comes out. I think it's changed somewhat from earlier years, where I think maybe that my work was a little more earnest in a way, and had less humor in it, or less ability to sort of bring in the irony and the wit, and that kind of came along. Um, and that's where it is right now. Also, a little less narrative now, and um, a little more attached or attracted to surprise in language, surprise of metaphor, little less straightforward narrative. I really like the concept of juxtaposition in the way, or kind of a mosaic where you can weave things through. So you might start with one subject, something else comes in. Thematically, it's related, but in terms of subject matter, it's not necessarily related so much, if you know what I mean, right? So the subject of, say, fire is there in the poem, but like that last one I've read, you also have got opera, you've got other things going on. And I like that effect of mixing things up and kind of starting somewhere, bringing in something unexpected, but kind of weaving them together in a way that holds together as a whole. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think it's different.
earlier in your reading, you talked about your love for form and form poetry. Does form help to reel you in?
It does both things. I think it puts a sort of brake on things, or a little, it taps the brake pedal anyway. And but it's also generative, because if you're trying to get to a rhyme or create a line that has a rhyme word at the end of it, it you start looking at what are those possibilities of thinking that lead you to that word. And you try out a lot of different words, but there are words that you would never never be there except that you have to get to a rhyme word, for example. So I find that it's really generative, and there are certain forms I'm more attracted to than others, like 14 liners I'm very attracted to. And it's partly the compression that 14 lines forces on you. You have to say something quickly, you have to get in, turn it so it's not a one note poem, and then go somewhere and finish it off. And I love doing that in 14 lines because it's that kind of, it's that kind of thing. It's not something that goes on for pages. It just has an immediate, I think, powerful effect when you can do something short. And so I'm also really drawn to shorter poems for that reason. Writing them and reading them both.
Yeah, let's explore public persona versus real life things. So when people meet you, are they expecting Bukowski in a sundress? Is there something that um, they're expecting?
Probably. I think it's just like, it's like being a person. People have various impressions of you depending on how they meet you and where they meet you and what your interaction is. And I think it's the same with poetry. There is a person on the page that does precede you, and it's never quite you, but it is you. And I think there's just this little shimmer there, where even in memoir, I found in writing Bukowski in a sundress, the character in the poems, although I really tried, the character in the prose, I really tried not to lie, whereas I feel free to lie in a poem, and I feel very free to just make shit up if I need to make it work for the poem. In nonfiction, in things like the personal essay, I need to be faithful to the facts, but there are still ways that you can, for example, any story you tell, for example, it might have been really embarrassing at the time, but you tell it to a friend and you make it funny. So there's a way you can kind of cheat with tone. I didn't create any composite characters or anything like that, but certainly tonally, uh, and just the choice you make of the things that you reveal and don't reveal are some ways you present a self in an essay. I think it's true too in poetry that you present a self, and definitely this book, Now We're Getting Somewhere, the voice of it, uh, sometimes you're following the voice. It's finding the voice of the piece, and the voice of the piece might be, I think in the case of Now We're Getting Somewhere, it's a little brattier than I am in general. It's a little more, I don't give a fuck kind of than I am in general. Um, but but that's the place you can do that. That's the place you can be free to create an alternate self, or a self that exaggerates aspects of who you are. Um, and so I think there's some of that going on. So I am and I'm not the person in the poems.
Was there anything that you included in a memoir or any of your poems that you wanted to pull back once it was on the page?
Not really. I think I got over that a long time ago, way back when I first encountered Sharon Olds's work. I sort of said, "Oh, really? You can write about anything? You can say that in a poem?" And so I think pretty early on, she and Kathy Acker, the fiction writer, who died several years ago at the age of 50, but Kathy Acker was another sort of guiding light for me as a writer, to say, yeah, you can pretty much do what you want. The page is a space of freedom, and so why not take advantage of that? So but I also believe in kindness and very much, and in not wanting to hurt somebody, but I do feel that I have the right to tell my own story and call them the way I see them. And you may not like it, but you might not like me either, you know, or you might like the poem and not me, or vice versa. That's just the way we live in the world.
What was your first reaction when you heard about poetry is dead? I'm sure that circulated.
That's my
And
reaction.
why would somebody say this?
How idiotic. Yeah, did you read the Times article that everybody was
Yes.
incensed about? It was a terrible article. It was really a terrible article, for one thing. not only that poetry was dead, but what the guy was saying was completely Looney Tunes, as far as I'm concerned. So, uh, and I think there was a big pushback from poets and people who read poetry and love poetry and say, no, it's not. But that said, it's never been mainstream in America. It has been more in other countries, but you know, I think it's definitely not. We're not going to see many bestsellers in poetry. We haven't seen many over the years, and we probably won't. But I think that's just fine. I think it's alive and well in its own, town.
Yeah,
And the
but
inhabitants of that town are very quality people.
it just seems like in this country, you have to say really dumbass things to get everybody to talk about.
It what? Oh,
Like
you
you
have
have,
to say, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
because everyone's talking about this article, yet no one thinks it's a good article, and no one that I know seems to agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, also, we lost a great one this week. Did you ever meet or do any readings with Charles Simic?
We were on the same docket many, many years ago in Palm Palm, I always get them mixed up. Which one's the one on the East Coast? Palm Beach? Yeah, Palm Beach. It was some writers consortium at Palm Beach, so I met him briefly, but I admire his work, certainly.
You wrote two guides. I don't want to sound like a smart ass here. Two guides to writing poetry. Now, if you wrote one guide, what was in the second guide?
Um, in a way more of the same, but I think most writers, when I read other writers on writing, I think, yeah, I say that. Yeah, I say that. Yeah, I say that. I say the same thing. We all sort of say the same thing, but we all have different ways of saying it, and everybody has different ways of receiving it. Like I've been listening to podcasts with George Saunders, and I love the way he talks about writing. It's not the way I talk about writing, but essentially he's saying a lot of the same things. And I think people need to hear it in different ways, and people need to get guidance in different ways. And there's certainly Ordinary Genius is the second book that I wrote, the one after Poet's Companion. And there are a lot more writing prompts in it, for one thing. So that's always something that is helpful to people, or just ideas for writing and different ways of thinking about creating a poem. Um, so yeah, I just wrote it because I was still thinking about things and had some more things to say. When you have something to say, if you're a writer, you write it. And I'm also, of course, a teacher. So I wanted to write another book with some more different examples of poems and to talk about poetry in a slightly different way. Um, yeah.
So here's a stock question. It even says it's a stock question in the chat. Who are you listening to or reading at the moment? I guess one's a music question and one's a literary question.
Yeah, yeah. It's always hard for me to say because I jump around so much. I'm very ADD in my reading and other things, but I'm always reading Dean Young, especially since he died. I'm reading him yet again. Diane Seuss, Terrence Hayes. Those are some people I've been reading for the past 2 years, basically, going back to over and over. And otherwise, too many poets to name, too many writers to name, because I've got a stack of books, and I pick them up and put them down, which probably a lot of people do. And listening to all kinds of music, really. But right now, I'm learning the banjo, so I've been listening to some banjo music. Um, yeah.
I love the banjo. Have you ever played a banjolele?
No, but I just bought, here's my little my two new toy. My
All
new
right, I want to see this.
is this very tiny, which I can't play it yet, and it's way out of tune. But but this is my new one, and I got it because I have a regular big, loud, heavy banjo. I have a travel banjo, And I just bought this one because it's even smaller than my travel banjo, and I'm hoping I can take it to Europe this year. Because airlines are really weird about musical instruments, and it's hard to take them on planes. And I would love to take, I'm going to be in Europe for 6 weeks, and I would love to have something to play. So I'm trying it out on a trip to Tucson to see if I get any static and how big the overhead is. And hopefully that's going to work out. So I'm
That
a
is
three banjo person now.
that is a beautiful banjo. One of
It,
your
it is it
stories.
is pretty, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Last question. Um, when did you start writing? Were you the type that would start like at age 6 and be like, I'm a writer, or was it uh later in your life? Or
I didn't start seriously writing until my late 20s. That's when I really got turned on to poetry and suddenly went, what is this? But I did write when I was younger. I remember I tried to write a novel when I was 9, and I got 10 pages in and gave up. And I, wrote terrible poems in high school, like we all do. But I really didn't think about writing as a anything to do, and I didn't really know anything about poetry, especially contemporary poetry, until my late 20s when I read some Plath and suddenly went, "Oh my God." Took the top of my head off, as Dickinson says, and that was pretty much it. I just decided I had to learn how to do that.
well, I really thank you for coming on tonight and reading and chatting with us. Um, Here is the latest book. It looks like this, and it even says support writers and independent bookstores at bookshop.org. And for some of the other books we discussed so briefly, there they all are. And if you really want to find out and explore, just go to kimaddonizio.com, 2Ds, 1 N, 1Z. So thank you very much. And folks watching on the stream, I'll keep the link in there if you want to come and read at the open mic. Just come join us. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.